Hi, everybody. Good morning. Welcome to Alexa Developer Office Hours. It's another Tuesday, and we're here to talk about all things Alexa development and say hello to those of you that are here on chat. So, welcome. Hello. Thank you for stopping by. Before we get started today, I have a couple quick announcements as usual. This is just a brief one. If you happen to be watching us from our YouTube channel, and if you aren't watching from our YouTube channel, if you're watching from Twitch, you can check the YouTube out later. There's a couple new videos that our team has posted to showcase some cool stuff that people are working on with Alexa. We've got this video about smart property and a senior living fellowship that is really well filmed, really interesting stuff. If you're interested in learning more about smart property senior living, please check this one out. And we also have one about voice games, which is a topic that's near and dear to my heart. A voice games company is talking about their business on Alexa. And that's going to show another Voices of Alexa series. So if you're familiar with the Voices of Alexa series, we have a number of different developers that are doing interviews with us about their Alexa business. It's really cool to see all the different perspectives throughout the world of what people are making on Alexa. And if you want to check out that video, you can learn more about what Voice Games is doing, what they're making. It's really cool, family-oriented video, and it's neat to see. So our team's working hard to make lots of cool different videos for everybody to watch. And we just love to check them out and appreciate their work. Now I'm going to bring on today's guest. You may know him because he's often in our audience today. Usually, but today he's actually behind the scenes with me, and he's going to be interviewed about some Alexa development. So I'd like to bring on our Alexa champion, Craig Walls, who's going to talk to us a little bit about his journey with Alexa and what he's making and developing. Good morning, or good evening, or afternoon. I know it's morning for both of us, right?
Sure. It's still morning. It's 10 o'clock my time.
Mm-hmm. How are you doing?
I am good. I have a little bit of a tickle in my throat, so if I suddenly start hacking, I apologize.
I did too. I got back from a trip to Atlanta, Dragon Con, which was where I was 2 weeks ago, and my throat was a little bit rattly for the last couple days, but I think it's mostly cleared. So hopefully I didn't get anything too bad while I was out there. But
yeah, my fault. The weather's been nice, so we slept with the windows open, and usually that happens when I sleep.
Oh, you get that little bit of a tickle from that. Weather here has been really hot, but that's just the end of summer coming into fall. It gets really warm. So let's get right to it. Tell us a little bit about yourself, and just let's talk about your Alexa journey. How did you start making stuff for Alexa?
Oh yeah, so a few years ago, I can't remember even what year it was. I was intrigued by Alexa because I've always been intrigued by the idea of talking to computers, and from when I was a kid, watching Star Trek, and they could talk to the computer and other sci-fi. But then it was so disappointing when I finally got my first computer and I had to type to it, not talk to it. And so when Siri came along, I was like, oh, that's cool. And then I thought, well, it's fun and it sets timers nicely, but I don't know. I couldn't develop for it. And so that again kind of turned me off. But when Alexa came along, I was sort of by that time a little jaded and sort of at first passed on it. And then I realized that, oh, yeah, you can develop for this thing. And in fact, there was a hackathon, again, 5, 6, 7, I can't remember how long ago it was, a hackathon that Amazon put on, and I joined in on it. And I had a lot of fun. I was hooked. I ended up creating a skill. It's still actually one of my most hit skills, despite the fact it's so stupid. It's just a fortune cookie skill, and that's the funny thing is I get so much traffic to that skill as opposed to the ones I've done that are more clever. And I think maybe I'm thinking about this all wrong. Maybe I should just do simpler things. But I was hooked, and since then that's just what I do. It's not my day job, unfortunately. It is my after hours fun, but I've had so much fun doing it.
So I have a couple questions already. I want to know more about that fortune cookie skill. Basically, you just ask it for a fortune. Does it pull from a database that you update?
Not from a database, just a flat file. And I haven't touched it in years. In fact, if I needed to do anything to it, I don't even know if I have the code anymore. I have to go find it.
How many different fortunes are there in there? Developer preview.
I don't remember. I honestly stole the list of fortunes. I'm also a member. My day job has me developing Java and I'm a member of the Spring Engineering team. And we had a sample application that did more or less the same thing. And so I just used that examples fortune list and went with it. So
Is most of your code in Java?
Um,
It's Node for Alexa.
when I do Alexa, it's Node. I
Mm-hmm.
feel Java's great. I love Java. I'm a big fan. But
Mm-hmm.
when it comes to developing for Alexa, at least until recently, that's been more challenging than with Node or Python.
Mm-hmm.
And even more recently, things have gotten better, but it's still not a perfect world. And so by now, I feel more comfortable developing in Node when I'm working with Alexa than I do in Java. And yet at the same time, I wouldn't imagine doing any of the things I do during my day job in Node. So
Mm-hmm.
it's like a Jekyll and Hyde thing, I guess.
Yeah, it's always good to know multiple different languages and syntaxes so you can kind of be adaptable. Because I personally do most of my development in Python, but a lot of the Alexa stuff I switched to Node just because there's more documentation. So I think there's been a little bit of like, let's add more Python docs to the this. So hopefully, we'll have more at some point.
Right. I mean, and that's actually one of the big things is the documentation around the Ask SDK for Java is just kind of slim.
Mm.
There's not a lot of
Well,
resources and libraries and documentation around it. So
good feedback for our docs team. You should send him a message and let him know.
we'll do.
So let's talk about your skills aside from the fortune cookie. What are the other skills that you've created, and what are you most proud of?
Well, I created one really dumb game. It's essentially how do you describe it? It's kind of like the game Concentration.
Mm-hmm.
It's called Roach Motel,
Mm-hmm.
and I was most proud of it because it was again for another hackathon. It was an APL hackathon, and I was getting to know APL at that time. I didn't really know it that well. And so I created this Roach Motel. It basically has 9 hotel rooms, and you knock on the door, and a roach will answer. And each roach has a different personality or something like that. And it opens the door, and if you match 2 of them, then those roaches are booted out of the hotel. And it's kind of dumb. I did all the graphics myself, and if you ever see it, you'll know that yeah, I'm not very good at graphics, but it was a fun experience. It's just dumb though. I created another skill called what's it called, Meeple Buddy, and it's just a board game suggester again for another hackathon, and that one actually made it into the top 10 for the hackathon. And
Very cool.
it just suggests board games like we have 3 players. What should we play? And it picks one for you. And then I've been speaking on the No Fluff Just Stuff conference tour for 13 years, I guess, something like that. No, 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 longer than that. Almost 23 years. I missed a whole decade on that.
Wow.
And so I created a skill just to kind of exercise my Alexa skills and created a No Fluff Just Stuff skill. And it could stand some love, it could stand some updating, but it does pull from an API that tells you what the current, the upcoming shows are and stuff, and who's speaking at them. And then I'm kind of proud of that. It's pretty good. It could stand a lot more updates, but it's pretty good. But my favorite skill, the one that if I have any free time, this is what I'm going to be working on, is
Mm-hmm.
mouse guests. Which the thing I'm least proud of is its name because it's a clever name, but it's often misinterpreted. So I'm thinking about renaming it. But what mouse guest does is it's a location-based skill. And I mean, you can use it at home, sure, and
Mm-hmm.
you can ask questions about it at home, but
Mm-hmm.
it really shines if you're in Disneyland or Disney World. Because when you're there, you can ask questions like, where's the nearest restroom, or where can I get a churro, or things like that. And based
Mm-hmm.
on your location, it will guide you to the nearest churro, restroom, ATM, whatever.
Mm-hmm. That's really really cool. Yeah, I haven't been to Disney since I learned about mouse guests, but eventually maybe I'll make it back there and I'll give a chance to give its full spin. I actually kind of like the name though, mouse guests.
I like it, but it doesn't. It more often than not gets misunderstood as mouse gas or
Oh,
something
okay, I
like
see.
that. And
I see.
so, depending on how well you enunciate it, or if you have an accent, it might pick up and do the wrong thing.
It just sounds like house guests, so it's like a nice
Mhm.
little pun. I like it. Um, let's talk about that's kind of what we're here to talk about because I think this is a really cool technical challenge and it's not something that we talk about that much on the show. In fact, we haven't really had anybody that's like a super deep in location based skills and you've been working really hard on this like location aware skill for quite some time now. And I see a comment in the Twitch that you're one of the most popular contributors on Slack, and your feedback is very useful. Yes, we do
Oh,
appreciate that.
thank you.
I try to be on the Slack, but there's always good to have extra people chiming in, especially if you've got a particular niche you're really good at programming and you want to weigh in and talk about the different changes and things. So it's great to have that Slack. Oh, and by the way, since I'm here and talking about it, I'll go ahead and plug the Slack one more time. If you're not on the Slack, it's a great place to get feedback and help with any Alexa skill you might be building. So do join us. We have a really great community there, growing and strong. So what gave you the inspiration to start building a location aware skill?
Well, I mean, once I got hooked on Alexa, and I was interested in that, immediately I started looking for swag. Is there a shirt I can wear or a shirt I can make? And I found early on there were some shirts that were being given away as one of those hackathons, but they also, you could buy them, at least at the time, you could actually buy those shirts on Amazon. So I did. And so I have a t-shirt that says Alexa everywhere on it, and I have a hoodie that says Alexa everywhere on it, and I love those.
Mm-hmm.
And but the problem is I keep seeing that phrase Alexa everywhere, and I didn't believe it because I would leave my house and I couldn't talk to Alexa anymore, and that bummed me out. And
Mm-hmm.
so when I guess the first thing that kind of tipped me off, got me excited about this possibly being Alexa everywhere, was when the Echo Loop came out. And maybe we have a moment of silence for the Echo Loop now that it's gone. But I love the Echo Loop. It's awesome. And I was able to talk to Alexa wherever I was at. And then Echo Auto, Echo Buds, and now I have a talk socket on my phone. I love the talk socket, by the way. It's
Mm-hmm.
awesome. And so I can talk to Alexa wherever I go. And so it seemed like a natural fit. And I thought to myself, even, and this is even before I got the talk socket, it's went
Mm-hmm.
back just with the Echo Loop. I thought, well,
Mm-hmm.
what can I build that would highlight the ability to talk to Alexa on this ring wherever I'm at? That something that would be better than and give me a better experience if I'm actually out in the world versus if I'm at home.
Mm-hmm.
And so I love Disney parks. In fact, I'm going to Disneyland in 2 days. I'm so excited.
Oh, oh,
And
great.
so I love Disney parks. Me and my family love going to Disney. And so I thought, well, this seems like a natural fit to create a skill that does that. So I started off not creating one that was location aware. I started with something very basic, just something that gave you park hours and real time live, whatever the wait time is for any attraction. So I could ask right now and it would tell me what the wait time for Haunted Mansion is, um, and a couple of other small things like that. And then I said, okay, now let's get into this location awareness thing. And so I started thinking, okay, well, if I'm in Disney, what are the questions that me and my family ask? And the thing is, we go to Disney World and Disneyland often enough that I usually don't have these questions myself,
Mm-hmm.
but I
Yeah.
have had these questions where it's like, okay, I need a water bottle. Where do I get a water bottle? Or
Mm-hmm.
where's the nearest restroom? And
Mm-hmm.
these are things I want to know. And of course, I don't have those. I don't have those problems today, so I'm not really a good user of my own skill because I just know. But it is useful to be able to ask things like that. And I can imagine users wanting to know. And you could ask a cast member. You could ask other people if you're so bold, hey, where's the nearest churro? And maybe they'll tell you, but, or hey, where'd you get that donut? You could do
Mm-hmm.
that, but it'd be nice if I wasn't so bold to talk to another person or ask a cast member. It'd be nice if I could just pull my phone up and ask that. And this is one of the things I think was talked about as one of the kind of the benefits, or one of the things you should think about when you're developing an Alexa skill, is what can it do better than a mobile app can do?
Mm-hmm.
And I have Disney has great, wonderful apps for your phone, but if I were to ask the question, where is the nearest restroom? If I wanted to ask that by navigating around the phone, it's going to take me a few taps to get there, and it's not terribly intuitive how to get to it, especially for certain things. I mean, for rides and restaurants, sure, but if I want to know a specific food location, it's not necessarily helpful in that regard. It's going to be difficult. And so the ability to just pick up my phone, especially with a device that doesn't even require me to unlock my phone, to pick up my phone and ask a question like that, is kind of awesome because that's something that I can do better than what the actual app can do.
Right. And it's quick and easy, very fast.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome. I guess once you've been to Disney enough, you sort of know where all the restrooms and all the churros are. But the average person, maybe if their first
Exactly.
time, And knowing exactly your location in the park means that you can ask those specific questions.
Right.
So, have you thought about expanding it to other parks? You're a Disney fan, but maybe thinking about Six Flags or Universal or something like that.
Yeah, and that's the thing is I'm drawing the data for wait times and park hours and things like that. I'm drawing that from an API that is not mine.
Oh, okay.
There's a API out there called Theme Park API, and I don't even remember off the top of my head what the URL is, but it's a wonderful
Oh.
API, and it has information for all sorts of theme parks, Six Flags and Universal and all the Cedar Fair parks, which includes like Knott's Berry Farm and things
Ooh,
like
oh
that.
yeah. I used to live near Cedar Point.
Yeah, it has all those in it. And so I've been thinking about expanding it to that. And it wouldn't be hard to do that. The biggest challenge is I don't know as much about those parks, so I would be limited on what I could offer. But it would give me an excuse for maybe for research trips. I don't know, something like that. And so yeah,
Yeah, it's for research. You have to do.
you
Oh
have to
shoot,
go,
shoot!
right?
I've got to go to Knott's Berry Farm because
And I know what
research.
SeaWorld San Antonio looks like because I've been there a few times, and I've been to Six Flags Over Texas because I used to live in Texas.
Uh,
I've been there a few times, but I've never been to Universal, and
Me
I've
neither,
never,
actually.
yeah. Aside from Six Flags Over Texas and SeaWorld at San Antonio, I don't think I've been to any park other than a Disney park.
Well, if you're, I grew up in Ohio. They've got a lot of good coaster parks in Ohio. Cedar Point, Kings Island. There used to be a SeaWorld out there too. I don't think there is anymore, but all right, I got to get back on the topic. I'm curious to know what is the biggest challenge you face working on these location aware skills. What's the trickiest part?
Well, that's a good question. The thing is, finding your location's easy. Alexa Skills Kit gives you all the stuff you need to do that. So you can start off by just getting permissions from the user, which is just a simple permissions thing like you would get for anything else that you get permissions for with Alexa. And in voice forward consent, it works with it as well. But the bigger challenge is the proximity and knowing
Mm-hmm.
where something is relative to the user. And there's lots of algorithms for that, and there's lots of libraries out there that implement those algorithms. And I thought, maybe I should use one of those. But then I had some of those are like more complicated than they need to be, and they offer a lot more features than I needed. I just simply need to know I'm here. Where's the nearest other thing that I'm interested
Mm-hmm.
in? And it occurred to me that while Cartesian coordinates are not necessarily the best thing for a globe, when you're talking about a big, the Earth, which is a big globe, they are great when you're talking about something that's smaller. Let's just say
Mm-hmm.
43 square miles, which is what the square mileage of Disney World is.
Wow,
Uh,
that's so big if you think about it that way.
oh,
But Disney World is huge, so
it's
yeah.
huge. It's like
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
twice as I can't remember the stats, like twice as big as San Francisco or something like that. Um, but 43 square miles, when you take and especially when you're further
Mm-hmm.
away from
Mm-hmm.
the poles, when you're a little bit further south or whatever away from the poles, then Cartesian coordinates are close enough. They're not
Mm-hmm.
perfect, but they're close enough. And so I just simply said, okay, I'm going to say, okay, what's the distance between this point and this point on a Cartesian coordinate system using just the geolocation as my coordinates,
Mm-hmm.
and it worked. It worked pretty well.
Oh, good.
Um, the biggest challenge, the tricky part, is those locations are based on um, as the bird flies.
Right.
And if I'm standing actually this happened to me, and I thought, well, that's weird. But I was standing in Tomorrowland in the Magic
Mm-hmm.
Kingdom, and I asked it a question about like water or a Powerade or something. I can't remember what I was asking about.
Mm-hmm.
And the nearest location to me, I sort of knew where it was already, but I was wanting to see if there was a closer one. And it did suggest a closer one on Main Street, which is, quite a bit of a walk around the
Oh,
map to get there.
right.
But it was the closest to me as the bird flies. And so
Right.
if they could, had drone delivery, then that would be perfect. But that was not the case. I would have to walk quite a ways. I'd have to walk past at least one, maybe two other places to get to the one it suggested. And so I
Right.
have some ideas on how to fix that. But there's only a few cases where I've encountered that kind of problem. So I'm not
Mm-hmm.
making it a priority to fix it. But I have
That
some
makes sense.
ideas.
Disney World has a lot of pathing because they're trying to
Mhm.
like guide your experience. So I can imagine you being like blocked by a feature when it's actually like right across that, but you have to go all the way around.
Right.
Right. Right. Comment from David Curley. I built a few location based skills now. Great fun to build, great fun to use, but small niche for discovery. It doesn't seem to occur to people to use their phone as an Alexa device. That's a pretty good comment. I
Yeah.
think I've talked to some other developers about this too. Some people just want to use the Alexa app as their gateway to Alexa, and it's really not that common, I think, for a lot of people to use it that way.
Right. I think I agree. I mean, discovery in general has been a challenge, I think, but especially for like location-based skills, nobody's going to think to do that. So it's kind of one of my goals. Once I do a little bit more tinkering with my skill and get it to do a little bit more than it does now, a little more polished, I was thinking about a separate campaign where I'm not talking to developers, but I'm talking to people who potentially might use my skill or other people's skills to sort of promote the idea that, yeah, this is an option. And you haven't thought about this yet, but hey,
Right.
if you have this, then you can talk to Alexa wherever you're at.
Yeah, both as a developer and as a user. I think it
Right.
would really open up a lot of possibilities for people.
Right.
Like aside for theme parks, where else maybe would be a good place to use this kind of skill?
Yeah, I've had a lot of ideas, and it's one of those things that I have a long list of ideas that I want to implement, but I have one already which is Mouse Guest that I focus most of my time on because it's the most fun. But
Mm-hmm.
one of the things I was thinking, and this again, real life scenario, this occurred to me. I was standing in the grocery store needing to find the tortillas, and I had no idea where the tortillas were. No
Gosh.
idea.
Yeah. Right.
And yeah, I could ask somebody who works there, but I couldn't find anybody who works there. I'd have to go up to the registers to find somebody. And I'm thought, well, it'd be nice if Alexa could tell me where the tortillas are. That would be awesome. But of course, Alexa had no idea where the tortillas were in my store. And so I got to thinking it'd be really cool to have store helpers. Now it'd require a lot of work because
Yeah.
I used to work in a grocery store when I was in high school. And so I kind of
Mm-hmm.
know how things happen. And it would require a lot of work for such a skill to know in every single store that I might go into where
Right.
the tortillas are or sodas or whatever. And as soon as we know that, and as soon as we have that in a database, they're probably going to reset the store and it's going to be in a
Right.
different location.
Right.
And so, but I thought still, let's ignore those little details. Let's actually see if I could build this. And I actually started, didn't get very far on it because I, again, found other things that caught my attention. But the idea that I could go into the nearby grocery store and I could ask where things are was pretty cool. I even went to the trouble. They have these signs above the aisles that give you a list of
Right.
products and you can find them. So I took photos of that. I didn't do this because I thought I'd look like a weirdo doing it, but I thought about walking up and down every aisle with my camera on just so I could get a video recording of where everything is on every aisle, just for that store. And I didn't do that, but that would probably be something I would need to do to kind of have at least a proof of concept. And I did all that. I sat down and I did that, and it was working kind of great. Well, not perfect, but kind of great. Um, and I kid you not, the day after I went through that experience, my local store reset,
Oh, they
and
redo
I could
everything.
not find the sodas. And in fact, even now, it hadn't been that long ago. Even now, on the aisle, on the sign above the aisle that tells what's on the aisle, sodas are written by hand with a marker.
Oh,
They haven't
okay.
even put
So
a real sign on it yet.
haven't even really, I don't know if this is true or not. I have also worked at a grocery store very briefly, and I worked in the deli because they give you hazard pay because of the sharp knives, so it was just a better deal. But sorry, I think they reset the store to confuse you on purpose, right? So you'll wander more, so you'll buy more stuff. That's what I've heard. I don't know.
To some degree, I think that's true. I don't know how true that is, but to some degree, I think that's
It might
absolutely
it
true.
might just be a theory that people have because it seems like you said as soon as you figure the store out, they're changing something or moving something around. I think it's to change the arrangement of the products so you see different products as you walk through and don't get too used to the layout.
Yeah. And that's what David Curley says, that they reset 2 or 3 times a year to prevent habit forming. Yeah.
Oh, prevent habit forming. Yeah, that makes sense.
And they're
Do you
not
think?
quick to share that either. So,
Yeah, yeah. If but do you think if a store had that data in API, you could probably ingest it and create something that way?
yeah. I also thought about, crowdsourcing it. So
Mm-hmm.
if
Mm-hmm.
it's not where Alexa told you it was, then correct her, and then we'll remember the next time around.
Oh, that's a good idea too. Geez, I'm trying to think now. What else would be a really good use for this location aware kind of thing?
Well, I have been thinking.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there's a couple of other things I've tinkered with the idea of. I haven't really explored it in any detail, but One of them is just if you're on a road trip. I remember
Hmm.
the good old American road trip where you're driving down Route 66 and there's a big ball of yarn, or the Cadillac Range, or whatever there is. Um, nobody ever does that anymore, I don't think. I mean, I'm a geek and I kind of do that sometimes when we're on the road, but it would be nice to be able to ask questions while you're on a road trip, like, what's near here? What's interesting to see here? And although I don't usually do a lot of road trips now, my parents live in southeast New Mexico. And so occasionally we do drive from Colorado down to southeast New Mexico. And there's some interesting things along the way that I just don't know about.
Right.
And I find out about them kind of randomly. And so it'd be kind of nice to do that, to be able to ask those questions. And again, it could be with my talk socket, or it could be my Echo Auto, or any car
Right.
that already has Alexa built in. You could do those things. Also, along those same lines, kind of the idea of road trip games. I haven't figured out what those would be, but something to kind of pass the time while you're on the road. The
Yeah.
other thing I
Yeah.
was thinking about, and this one I find interesting, because I live in a town. It's not a very big town, but it's about college. There's not a college here, but it's about the size of the town that I lived
Right.
near when I went to college. And they have an interesting downtown with lots of little things that you could see. I mean, I've been downtown several times. I still don't know what's all down there, because it's so rich with restaurants and shops and stuff. It would be interesting to create kind of a scavenger hunt type thing for different cities,
Oh,
different towns, or different areas where you're playing a game, you're searching for things, but along the way it leads you to these interesting locations in the town. Your goal is not to find out that there's an Italian restaurant on this corner, but along the way, as you're trying to meet your goal, you become aware of what's actually around you, and so you can be drawn into these places. And I would think that the local chamber of commerce and different businesses would be interested in being part of that path that leads them to whatever it is.
oh, yeah, that's a cool idea. We live in a small town now, sort of, because we're in the suburbs, and we get the like circular that comes out that tells you what's going on in the town this weekend. Those are always fun. But that makes me think of, how when you're walking around the town, at least in the States, you see the historical plaques that mark like a historical, this is the first brewery in the city, or I live near Philadelphia, so you have a lot of them, because it's like, this is where Ben Franklin's office is, and there's a whole bunch of little plaques. But even small towns without, they usually have those. It would be really cool to see a skill that just marked all of those different
Mhm.
plaques. So you would just like, go from plaque to plaque, and maybe decide like what historical thing you want to visit. It'd be where those plaques wouldn't reset. Yeah, exactly. It wouldn't be like a grocery store. Those are
Not
set in
likely
those
to,
are
yeah.
set in stone, literally. They're like big metal plaques or big stone like tablets that tend to be places. So they wouldn't move. So that might be a useful one.
And you could add in interesting information, because I know there's a restaurant in our town. It's on the corner. It's a nice restaurant. I've been there a few times,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't remember the details of it. But I do remember it is a historical location in the town. There was something
Mm-hmm.
significant that happened there early on in the formation of the town, and so it'd be nice to ask those kinds of questions too. And it doesn't have a plaque, as far as I know, but it would be the same kind of idea as the plaque.
Well, an app would be really cool for that, because, or a skill would be really cool for that, because you could click through, ask it like, just say, hey, what's in my neighborhood, and it could just say like, oh, it could show you like a little slideshow of different things depending on where it linked you to.
Right.
Really cool. I'm just gonna catch up on chat now. They asked me that on purpose. Yeah, I think they do reset grocery stores on purpose. We just talked about the reason that they do that. It's kind of frustrating, but I know that there's a psychological reason for why they do it that way. Um, Brian Tarbuck says, I've been working on a skill for truckers that would tell them about upcoming rest stops, gas stations, etc. Oh, very useful if you happen to have an Alexa device in your truck.
Yeah.
Yeah. I recently developed skills for an independent pharmacy and a museum. Okay, the museum's another great example of something you could do with location based awareness. We have a lot of interesting museums around here too. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember going back to Brian's comment on for the skill for truckers. I remember several years ago, it may still be out there for all I know. Charmin had a website, basically sit or squat, and it was crowdsourced rankings of different restrooms you might encounter where you're at. And so you get to decide whether or not you want to go to that restroom or find a different one.
That's actually really useful though. Imagine you're in a strange city and you have to ask it really quick. Hey, Alexa, where's the nearest bathroom
Hmm.
that I can get into that's public that I don't have to pay a fee to get into? Do
Right.
a whole bunch of different things. That would have to be crowdsourced though, probably, because
Have to
people would
be.
definitely have. Oh, I don't want her to beep on me. Well, I think she's just giving me another weather alert because we've had some weather here lately. Oh gosh, I think there's so many different potential ideas that we could make with a location-aware development. But what other stuff besides that do you like building with Alexa? Do you have any other dreams or ideas that you're working on?
Well, I've always, especially since that Roach Motel thing, I've always enjoyed working with APL. I'm not super skilled at it. It's not my strong suit, but I enjoy it. And I think that APL especially is so rich. It's almost a topic in and of itself. There's so many
Mm-hmm.
things that you can do with APL, and I've enjoyed that. I mean, I'm looking right now. I keep glancing over to the right because I have an Echo Show 8 on my desk, and it keeps distracting me. But there's so many things I can do on that. I have a couple of other Echo Shows around the house. I love the Echo Show 10, which is not 10, but the 15, which is on my wall over there. That's awesome too. And so I've been trying to find opportunity to do more interesting things with APL, and I've not got anything to really show yet, but I've been enjoying that. I've been also working on widgets, specifically a widget for MouseGuest. I've had a few people here who are aware of it and have seen pictures of it, and I've posted screenshots of it on Slack and the APL channel. If anybody wants to go back and see what those look like, and it's just I've had a lot of fun doing that. Now, one of the things I've also started doing, and this is actually not just an Alexa thing. It started with Alexa. I started getting interested in it back February of this year, maybe. I created a video, and you can find that on my YouTube channel if you go dig around for that. Basically, I wanted to put a voice in front of GPT-3. And I thought, it makes sense to me that you have a LLM out there that you could talk to. And so I built that, and it was a lot of fun. And so since then, I've gotten even more interested in it, and I've been pulled in all sorts of directions with LLM, because there's the Alexa angle of it, but also just at a lower level, working with trying to get my head around how LangChain and Llama Index work as two different, both, well, Python and there, but I've been working with the Node versions of them.
Mm-hmm.
But then I also, again, I'm a member of the Spring engineering team, and
Mm-hmm.
one of my coworkers, his name is Mark Pollock, he's created a new project called Spring AI, which is essentially, it's inspired by LangChain and Llama Index, and he's aiming to bring LLM type capabilities to your Spring applications. And so I've been spending a lot of time with that lately. And so I've been trying to think of ways I could use that in my Alexa skills. Not necessarily the Spring AI, but just the LLM stuff. And I've got some ideas. I got some really cool ideas, especially around like board games. Now I did this in Spring AI, but there's no reason I could not have done it as an
Mm-hmm.
Alexa skill. And so I've
Mm-hmm.
started thinking of this idea where I could ask questions about the rules of a game, because
Oh, right. Mm-hmm.
we had a brand new game called Moon, and Moon is fun. I enjoyed it, but there were some questions I had, and even though I had read the rule book front to back several times, it was our first time playing it, and I had questions, and I had to go keep consulting with the rule book to figure out what the answers were. It would be nice if I could simply ask, "Hey, Alexa, ask Board Game Helper or whatever I call it, is it okay if I do this? Or if I play this card, is that legal? Or if I play this card, does that protect me from this other thing?" And her give an answer. And so now I've done this recently. In fact, I posted a video yesterday on how to do this with Spring AI, not with
Mm-hmm.
Alexa, but with Spring AI. And I basically took a game I know very well, at least I
Mm-hmm.
thought I knew it very well. And I basically fed it the rules, and I asked it a question that I thought I knew the answer to, and I was surprised when it gave me a different answer.
Huh.
And I thought, well, surely it's hallucinating. Surely it's wrong. And I went and read the rules, and I'm like, oh yeah, we've been playing it wrong.
Oh,
The AI
sometimes
was
those
right.
games get pretty dense. Yeah, I'm a Dungeons and Dragons fan myself,
Yeah,
so those
and it's a
those
simple
games
game.
have a lot of rules that you have to remember.
And this
You
is
have.
a simple game, so I don't know how I
Mhm.
missed that detail, but So I was a little surprised that we've been playing it wrong all along. But now I did that again, not with Alexa, but that's the kind of my next logical move is to do the
Hmm.
same sort of thing with Alexa.
I linked your YouTube in the chat for people that are on Twitch or Facebook or YouTube. You can see the YouTube link to his YouTube. You've got a lot of really interesting tutorials there as well. In addition to that, have you posted anything cool recently that you're proud of on the YouTube?
Well, I think that thing I just spoke about, which is the Spring AI thing, that was actually pretty awesome.
Hmm.
I haven't done a lot of videos recently with regard to Alexa, although I have a list of them. In fact, I was planning on doing a few of those over the weekend, but the Spring AI thing sort of took priority. I had to get that out there but if I didn't get it out there, I know about three other people who are going to beat me to it, and so I wanted to beat them to it, and I didn't want to look like I was copying them. Uh,
Right.
but yeah, I
Looks like your
think
latest is Alexa though. So I'm looking at it right now.
well,
You've
on
got
that
the
channel,
talking
on I
application.
have another channel that's my Spring stuff, and that's where I have
Oh, okay.
the other set of videos. But yeah, my latest one is on
Okay.
local Alexa development, and that has come up so many times. I've noticed in Slack as well as in office hours, and so that's when I created that video, is to basically here's where I can point to rather than just keep waving my hands around and answering on Slack every time and kind of recreating it. I thought, well, I'll just go ahead and create a video and people can watch that, because I honestly I don't know how I ever survived pushing my stuff out every time before I tested it. Being able to test it local and running it locally is awesome.
What's your other YouTube? We'll link it in the chat as well. I
Yeah,
know
let me
you've
see if
got
I can
two.
find that for you. I think I
Yeah,
have
grab
it.
it for me because that one's your has your recent one, but there's another one I know and I don't have it right in front of me and I should.
Yeah, here I'll see if I can put this here. I'll phone it at you, and you can throw it wherever you need to
All
throw
right,
it.
perfect. I'll check this out. I'll make sure everybody knows where to find you after. Spring in action. Yeah, that's good stuff here. All right, so there's also this one. So you've got Alexa videos, you've got Spring AI videos, you've got a couple different things going on in these different channels.
Yeah, I got my hands on a lot of things. I'm easily distracted by shiny things.
Well, let's talk about that. You've talked a little bit about your stuff for Alexa. What other stuff are you working on right now?
Well, yeah, Alexa is my after hours thing,
Mhm.
and I try to find as many after hours as I can to work on it. But it's not my day job. My day job, I'm a member of the Spring Engineering team, but my
Mhm.
actual project I work on, I'm doing enterprisey things, um, building cloud software for people who are developing for the cloud, specifically for people who are planning to deploy their applications in Kubernetes.
Oh,
And Kubernetes is kind of one of those you either love it or you hate it type things. And I think the
yeah.
people who hate it, and I was one of them, the people who hate it aren't giving it a fair shake. I've sort of I get some of the concerns, and I've got. In fact, I think nope, I don't have the video out there for that. But if you go to my website habuma.com, I do
Mhm.
have a link to a video I recently or to a presentation I recently gave that talks about how to kind of smooth over some of the Kubernetes stuff and make it a little bit easier to deal with.
Mhm.
But yeah, I've been a Spring developer for longer than I've been a member of the Spring engineering team, and almost Spring just celebrated its 20th
Wow.
anniversary, pretty much all that time. And so I'm the author of a book called Spring in Action, which is what that channel is named after.
Hmm.
And I'm also an author of a book on Alexa, so developing talking or build talking apps for Alexa. So that's
Excellent. Cool.
those I tend to write about or create videos for those things I enjoy doing. So
It's so great that you've put together your hobby development and your work development and sort of made like this extra business out of it.
yeah, it's. I mean, I do have other things I enjoy as well. I mean, I'm not always coding, but if I'm coding, these are the things I enjoy doing.
Excellent. Cool. So if people have technical questions about location-based development, they can reach out to you on our Slack. Where's another good place to find you?
Yeah, Slack. I'm available on pretty much all the various socials known as Habuma,
Habuma.
Habuma. But also, I mean, if you don't remember anything else, if you go to habuma.com, that you'll find the links to my socials, you'll find links to videos, you'll find links to my books, you'll find all sorts of stuff, and how you can reach out to me there.
Let me do a quick plug there. I'll put it up on the screen for the folks who haven't seen it. What's that name? I know what it's from, but for the audience, why Habuma?
Yeah, a long time ago, when I first was seeking out a unique domain name, I could have got craigwalls.com, but that just seemed
Mm-hmm.
cheesy and I didn't want to do that. And so at the time, we had three dogs, Harley, Buster, and Max. So I just took the first two letters of their names and we got Habuma.
It's funny how you'll pick a random name like that, and then it just becomes your brand, and it just sticks forever and ever. But that's a
Yeah,
cute
Harley,
one.
Buster, and Max are long gone, but
Oh,
we still have Habuma.
it's a nice way to memorialize them too. Just thinking about how that impacts your life and your family. Well,
Yeah.
I got through all of my questions. Is there anything else you want to chit chat about today while you're on the show? We've got a few minutes left.
Well, we could talk about anything,
Literally
literally anything.
anything.
I could at least make up an answer. I'm at least as good as an LLM when it comes to making up answers. So.
How long are you in Disney for next week?
Oh yeah, I'm only there through Saturday. This is just a short trip, and it was sort of an impromptu trip. Me and my wife decided to go just us, not even taking our kids with us. This is like one of the first times in a very long time that we've gone just us. Our very first trip was in 1998 when my wife and I got married. That was our honeymoon. Is
Oh,
in Disney World, and we've been going pretty much with kids ever since then. But this is one of the first times since 1998 that it's been just me and my wife, and so we're going. We're leaving Thursday morning, coming back Saturday night, and so we're going to spend one full day and then two pretty full days in Disneyland, and
that's fun.
it'll be a lot of fun.
Disneyland, the California
Land,
one. Yeah,
the
right.
California one.
Have you ever done the drink around the world challenge in Epcot? Because we did that. And it was pretty hard, intense.
Yeah, I'm not much of a drinker. I mean, I occasionally have something, but I'm not. No, that's not for me. We do when they have like flower and garden and food and wine. Yeah, we
Yeah,
hit as many of those little kiosks as we can.
we did that too. Yeah, that's lovely.
We eat ourselves silly around the world, but we don't necessarily drink around the world.
So does Mouse Guest take that into account? Does it have the like, oh, there's food and wine happening right now, or does
That's
it
on my
not know that
to-do
stuff?
list.
Okay,
There's
okay.
so much on my to-do list. And what I have is every time I'm also kind of weird
Mm-hmm,
about this. I collect park maps. And so every
mm-hmm.
time I go walk into a park, I grab like two or three and I don't even open them. I just put them in my backpack and take them home with me. So I have a shoebox that's filled with park maps from all of our trips. I even go back to 1998. I have park
Oh
maps
wow,
from
wow.
1998.
I know I don't
And
save any of that stuff. That's
yeah.
amazing.
And so I use those just because they're interesting and kind of see what it used to look like back then. But
Mm-hmm.
also, I collect during Food and Wine and Flower and Garden. I collect the little passport, so that if for those of you
Oh
who don't
right,
know, when there's one of these festivals going on, there's food everywhere,
right.
and these little kiosks all around the park, and you can sort of like little by little trays of whatever food they happen to be selling for different countries and stuff like that. And so you go up there and you buy your food and you eat it, but there's a passport and you can get that passport. You can use it as a checkbox to kind of remember
Oh
where you've been
yeah.
and what you've had. So you can kind of use it as I mean, honestly, if you check off every box in that book, I worry about your health. But
Right, you're eating way too much food at that point.
exactly, especially if you're doing it in one day, don't do that. But maybe if you're there for a whole summer, maybe you could pull that off. But I get those little guides, and so those guides, they have two purposes now. First off, I just keep them for historical purposes, but also I have them as kind of a reference because I'm thinking about what I can do with mouse guests to answer questions about food and wine and flower and garden. And those guides are they're kind of for my research. I can see, okay, what's happened in the past. And
Mm-hmm.
they usually don't change them too much every year.
Right.
There's usually some new food, or maybe a dozen or so new items, but they're usually kind of repeats every year. And so I can and they're usually always in the same location every year.
Hmm.
So I can use that as sort of as a helper for me when I'm building this up.
You'd only know that if you went back a lot, probably. Yeah, they're the same multiple year over year. Does Mouse Gets track the character meet and greets too? I guess they're in the API, so maybe.
Actually, that's not in the API.
Oh, interesting.
I wish it was. That would be neat. But there also is a certain amount of consistency. You sort of,
Mm-hmm.
especially in Disney World, Disneyland a little less so, but in Disney World, you usually know where the characters are at.
Okay.
I mean, if you know, you know, type things. If you don't
Right.
know, then mouse guess will be very helpful for that. But if you it would be nice to do that. And it's actually one of the ideas I had long before I even knew what Alexa was.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things I wanted to build because, again, going back to my experience with this, my youngest daughter on her very first trip to Disney World, she was 2 years old.
Oh,
She's
yeah.
16 now.
Mm-hmm.
But when on her first trip, she was 2 years old, and all she wanted to do was see Snow White.
Mm-hmm.
And we could not find Snow White anywhere.
Yeah.
And we asked cast members, and the cast members were helpful, but they also said, well, sometimes she's here and, whatever.
Right. Right.
They're very vague about that because they don't want to give away the fact that she might be in two or three places at the same time. Don't tell
Right.
anybody that. But they're kind of vague about it on purpose. But it would,
Mhm.
I was thinking it'd be nice to have a way to know where the characters are. And
Right.
so that's still on my to-do list for Mouse Guest, even though I've never built it. Again, they're fairly consistent. They don't change often. So it'd be fairly
Mm-hmm.
nice to
Mm-hmm.
be able to ask that question and get a decent answer. Even if it changes, there's some that'll probably not ever change. And so it'd be nice to at least have those in there.
Yeah, Data Voice has the same thing. Ask Mouse, guess where's Tiana? Yeah, it's hard to tell. I think
Yeah.
like in Epcot, usually she hangs out in Germany because that's like where the seven dwarfs hang out. But
Yeah.
it does vary from place to place and time to time.
And
Just a recollection of my own. Yeah.
Dana's question is I know Dana was in
Uh-huh.
Disneyland this last weekend,
Hmm.
and he was wanting to know where Tiana's Palace is because Dana also likes Creole food. And Tiana's Palace
Oh.
is a new place that opened in Disneyland, and they have Creole. And so
Oh, I haven't been there. That must be newer than my last visit.
yeah, it used to be something else. Not Cafe Orleans. What's the other one's name? I can't remember now. Maybe Dana
Hmm. Hmm.
remembers. But it was basically rethemed it around Princess and the Frog.
Right. Right. So aside from Mouse Guests, if you had unlimited time to work on a project, what do you think you'd work on?
Aside from Mouse Guest, that's the hard
Yeah,
one.
I mean Mouse Guests first, right? That's the most fun, I think.
Yeah, I'm very much interested in board games, and so I'd
Hmm.
probably do something around that. Again, that whole idea of asking questions about the rules would be very, very fun.
It'd be very useful. Ate there on Friday. It opened on Thursday. Lucky. Wow, one of the first people. Did you check in on an app because we were one of, ironically, we were some of the first people in Pandora for some reason, just because it happened to be the same weekend we were there. So we checked in on like this swarm app. It was like, you're the trailblazer because you're the first people there. It was kind
Yeah,
of neat. It was so crowded because it was like the opening weekend for that particular attraction. It
yeah,
was
Pandora
crazy.
was insane that weekend. I
Hmm.
remember seeing the lines online.
I was gonna say, were you there too? It would be such a coincidence. I found out later that somebody else I knew was there, and it was so funny. Like we didn't run into each other because it was such a mess, but it was pretty wild. Waited in line. I imagine the wait was crazy for the food.
Yeah, the pictures I saw from Pandora on its
Hmm.
opening weekend, they stretched out of the land and
Right.
into kind of the Discovery Island area.
Yeah. I also want to create a board game with Alexa. So many possibilities. I think it'd be cool to have Alexa do the board game rules is a great idea, or even have as a like a referee. Like,
Yeah.
what if you could play? What if you could play a game with Alexa? I think there's some challenges there, like leaving the mic open in case you had to ask a question because it doesn't leave it open, right? You have to respond quickly.
Well, there was a game. There was actually two
Hmm.
board games that allowed Alexa to play with you, and I don't know if they're still around or not. I can't remember what either of their names were, but
Mm-hmm.
they're both kind of cool. One of them was kind of like a Clue game. It's kind of like Clue, but it was more cooperative than anything. And what Alexa did would play the roles of the different characters in the game, so you could interrogate
Okay.
the characters by.
Oh, that's really cool. I like that idea. People should make another one of those. Data Voice says, "My son is a magic judge. We thought about creating a skill. Magic the Gathering. I used to play that too. There's a lot of rules in Magic the Gathering. That'd be really useful,
Yeah.
especially if you could ask it about specific cards.
Well, that would be useful. I mean, I don't play Magic, but I have played games where what's called the 100 rules game. So, like,
Hmm.
Unstable Unicorns is a good example of that, where every card has its own rule. And so being able
Oh
to
yeah.
ask a clarifying question would be helpful.
Never played Unstable Unicorn. That sounds like a fun game though. Deck building Kickstarter. Cool.
Yeah, Unstable
I
Unicorns is awesome.
I have a big shelf of board games, but probably not nearly as many as you do.
I have about 100 or so.
Oh wow. David Curley, how about a passport stamp feature in Mouse Guest so folk can check off the rides they visit during a trip? Ooh,
Yeah.
that's a pretty cool idea.
I've already got that on the to-do list as well, along with a kind of pre-trip planning where you say, okay, here's the things I want to do, and then it reminds you. And when you're near those things, it'll tell you, oh yeah, you wanted to ride this. The lines are low right now. Hey, why don't you go get in line?
Oh, that's a clever idea. It maybe could even help you tell you when the lines are the least long for the things that you want to do, so you can kind of plan your trip out in advance.
Yeah, and to some degree, it already does that. If you were to ask now what the line is for any attraction, it's going to tell
Mhm.
you what it is, and it's going to follow it up by saying, you should ride now because the lines are expected to remain steady the rest of the day. Or it may say, I would wait until 8 o'clock tonight because the lines are expected to be shorter by then. Things like that. Because
It's
that's one of the things
usually.
the API offers is
Mhm.
forecasts.
Oh, that's really cool. It's usually easiest to do the really big stuff like either first right away or near the end. Everything is sort of packed like in the middle of the day.
Oh yeah, the I remember the key trick we found is in Magic Kingdom. If you want to ride Seven Dwarfs Mine Train, get in line at 11:59, or that's if it's closing at midnight. Get in line
Hmm.
at whatever the 59 is after the hour for when it closes. And the
Oh,
line may say 45 minutes, but I swear it's going to be more like 20.
right.
You're going to go
They're
right through
gonna
there.
slam you through because the park's almost closing, so they want to get you. Everybody else is left.
Yeah, and that's the thing is that they won't kick you out of line. You as long as you're in
Right.
line, you can ride. But um, starting at closing time, they won't let you in line anymore. So get in line 1 minute before the line closes, and you'll go through really fast.
Cool. Clever. We've talked about being able to tell who else is there using mouse guess. Oh, that's a fun idea too.
Yeah, kind of. I know that I use occasionally. I don't use it for its full features, but I use a site called TripIt when I
Hmm.
travel, and I use it mostly just as a place to throw my itineraries so that I know where everything is when I go looking for it. But it also can be used as a social thing. And so if I happen to be traveling to Boston and somebody else happens to be in Boston at the same time, we could meet up for dinner or something. That's the kind of the thing it does. And so what Dana's talking about here is the same idea. If I'm in Disneyland and Dana's in Disneyland, I would know. I could ask it, who else is here? And then among my friends and followers, it will tell me who's there.
Yeah, as long as it, an opt-in thing where you know the people that you're talking to. It seems like a really fun idea to be able
Yeah,
to meet up with people. Then I wouldn't have had that weird situation where we were both in Disney World at the same time and didn't even ever run into each other. We could have at least said hi, right?
yeah, and I would have never. I mean, I certainly don't want to know everybody who's in
Right,
Disneyland, but
right.
I've had a few occasions where I've been there and I've run into people I know.
That's really fun. It's just for a small world sometimes.
It is a small world after all.
That's a great way to end it, I think. Oh, thank you so much for being on the show today. It's always
Thank
great to
you.
talk to people who are developing interesting stuff and find out what inspires them and what they're making. If anybody has questions, of course, you can join us on the Slack. There's going to be another post to the Slack at the end of the broadcast here. And hopefully you're inspired to create something new because I think this has inspired me and hopefully everybody else out there. Tune in again next week. We will be here again on next week. I've forgotten what next week's show is because oh, actually, next week we're talking about voice of the developer. We're going to talk about our voice of the developer programs and how you can give feedback to us about your development experience. So I did remember what we're talking about next week. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
All right, take care, everybody.